Please join us in welcoming investor and co-founder of HomeAway, Carl Shepard, in discussion with Skift executive editor and founding editor, Dennis Schaal.
Good morning, and welcome to the No Spin Zone. Carl, I've always wanted to say that.
Oh, someone's got to say it.
Thanks for being here. Carl, as you know, you co-founded HomeAway.
I seem to remember that.
2005.
Yeah.
It's now called Verbo, mostly. Name kind of grew on me, Not too bad. You were also on the board of Turnkey before Vacasa bought it.
Correct.
They merged together. You're now on the Hostel World board. So you've seen a few things along the way, right?
A few.
So let's talk about how the industry has evolved over the years and some of the key issues. Maybe a way to get into it is, a hot topic these days is pricing for hotels versus short-term rentals.
Okay.
And the value proposition. Airbnb says that the price of a one-bedroom short-term rental is going down. It's about $40 lower than the price of a hotel room on average around the world, and those prices are going up. So how do you see this dynamic?
Well, I see the dynamic being influenced dramatically by the end of the pandemic and the travel season of 2023, which was completely bizarre. Maybe we'll see some more rationalization coming in 2024. The summer hasn't played out yet, so we don't know. I think the other thing to look at is you have the previous presentation. Where people are staying is what's driving this perception. If you're staying in a place that's largely vacation rental driven,
right,
then those prices have been pretty stable and they do go up because of other forces in the vacation rental industry. If you get to an urban location like New York, Paris, San Francisco, or any big city, the price parity at hotels is important, and whether or not it will come down, I think we'll have to see what 2024 says. But yes, I believe that urban destinations are more influenced by hotel pricing than they are by short-term rental pricing.
How has the ownership structure of the industry changed, and how has that affected pricing?
Oh my God, it's changed dramatically. I think if you go back to when we started HomeAway, the whole premise of HomeAway was we only had individual owners. We had no management companies when we first started HomeAway in 2005. And that was the legacy of the 5 companies that we bought to put together into HomeAway. They were all individual owners. Why? Individual owners wanted to use the home that they owned. They were vacation rentals. They wanted to use those homes. But their definition of profit was offsetting of cost. I have a house at South Padre Island. I would like to offset my insurance. I'd like to offset my taxes. I'd like to make a little bit of money, but to me, that's all profit, right? Because I define profit as above my sunk cost of ownership of this vacation rental. Now you come to 2024, and what you see is that the people who have come into this industry in the last 5 to 6 years have invested to get into the industry. So they have real capital at risk that an individual homeowner in 2005 didn't perceive that they had capital at risk. They already own the house. Now you have your interest payments, you have your principal payments, you have your profitability needs to be above all of your cost. And if you don't make money at all, then you have a problem. So that's driven up prices across the board as individual owners have taken back seats to professionals who are buying in and putting a property to rent immediately as opposed to it's my family's summer vacation home. So the mix of inventory I think is radically different, which is why I think Airbnb's idea of going back to work for the host is a good one. They won't do it, but it's a good idea.
Why won't they do it? They've been talking about it the last couple of years. Ever since the start of the pandemic, we want to go back to the individual hosts. They say that individual hosts get higher ratings than professional hosts on the platform.
I believe that.
Yeah.
The last time I saw data on this, you have to forgive me, has been 2014. So the last time I actually saw data on this. But at the time when we asked our owners or our travelers which they preferred, if they expressed a preference, they expressed a preference for owner managed and not professionally managed. And I think that has not changed. So when Chesky came out with that the other day, I thought, yeah, that makes sense to me.
Right.
Because an individually managed home, in my experience, was always nicer. It always was better furnished. It was always better taken care of than the homes that came through professional property managers. And we can get into that in a second, but I believe it. Now, whether or not you believe, I believe Airbnb's PR versus what they're doing is a different thing. I've never believed Airbnb's PR. They've always been about vacation rentals. They've never really been about individual host. It's just who they are. And you have to, as Maya Angelou says, you know, when someone shows you what they are, believe them. That's what they are. They are for professional hosts, and they are for the super hosts, who are other names called property managers. So that's who Airbnb is. They can talk about something which goes to their image of this individual host, and you're staying in Mary's house, and isn't Mary cool? She also does art on the side. But no, that's not where they make their money.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Airbnb defines individual hosts as hosts that don't use property management software. But you could manage, 18 homes on Airbnb, and they would consider you an individual host.
Yep, and they would advantage you because in their search results, because you have higher responsiveness. That's why I've pretty much quit using both Vrbo and Airbnb personally, because who they advantage in search are the people that if I want to rent from a property manager, I can go on their website and rent directly from them, and I don't pay Airbnb or Vrbo a fee, which is, I founded HomeAway. I don't use it because I'm not going to pay that fee. I'm just going to rent directly from the property manager.
Where's the loyalty, Carl? Come on. Just kidding.
Well, they changed the name.
Right. And it's no longer VRBO either. It's Vrbo.
It is if you talk with the old timers. They can't quite get to Vrbo.
Yep.
Yeah.
Hey, so I'm sure we have a lot of property managers from property management companies in the audience. But if you look around, is the property manager business model dead? I mean, look at, you're going to say no.
No.
But let's, Seth mentioned it before. Let's look at Vacasa. It's struggling. Sonder is busy, cutting its portfolio. Evolve has had layoffs. What's the deal?
Well, those are three different models.
Right.
Vacasa, Evolve, and Sonder are different models. The property manager's not dead. When I left HomeAway in 2015, I gave an exit interview, and I said the next 5 years were going to be the revenge of the property manager, meaning that the industry was formed, the online industry was formed on the backs of individual owners, but the property managers were going to have a resurgence because it's hard. As there have been more inventory come on, I mean, when I left HomeAway, I think we had 2.5 million properties. I don't know what their count is now. So the competition is a lot more. It's harder for an owner to represent themselves. And it's just, I personally, on my vacation rentals, I have a property manager. Now, the size of Vacasa is one of the interesting problems. And the thing that I think we all have to look at is, historically, Dennis, I can't think of any property manager who has been able to continue growing after about 25,000 properties. I just haven't seen it. Yeah. And you can try to do that through acquisitions, but if you do it through acquisitions, now you've got the problem of standardization across large geographies. I looked at, my lesson came on this with Interhome. I looked at Interhome as something to buy way back in the day. And what Interhome was back then was an owner representation. That's all it did, is it represented owners. It kind of has the business model that Evolve has today. And I realized that model, they were stuck. They had 35,000 properties. I think they have 35,000 properties today, because just the attrition alone keeps you from growing. So I think that's one challenge for them. I think this challenge of a professional manager who wants to own the inventory or lease the inventory and then arbitrage it, which is the Zonder model. I think the investment required is just too high. So I've never been, apologies to my friends at Zonders, I probably won't have them now, but I never thought that business model would work. So I think the jury's still out on that. Evolve is just another one, but all of these companies like Evolve and property managers in general are dealing with the fact of how many properties can one individual property manager manage. Because at the end of the day, someone's got to walk into the place, they've got to have it clean, they've got to make sure it was inspected after it was clean, and that's all boots on the ground. Hard to do with technology. So scale is the enemy of most property managers.
Don't forget to put some questions in the app. We can ask Carl. So maybe the property management model is not dead, but the dream of a national brand, or even an international brand is dead. If you can only scale at the max to 20, 30, 40,000 properties, it's hardly a national brand.
Yes, but I don't think the dream is dead. I've long believed that this is one of the areas where people should really look to how hotels scaled. Because hotels, they don't own all these hotels. They have flags, right? They're basically franchises. So I believe there is a national brand that has brand standards if you can enforce them, but you can't get down to the fact, to the idea that one central location or even a decentralized location is going to clean to the same standards, have houses at the same standard. That's a real challenge for them. So I think there could be a national brand, but I don't think it's going to be I own the property managers. I think it's going to be I own the brand. And the brand has to have promise and the brand has to be protected.
I think there are some franchise companies emerging in the space, right?
I think they are, and I think they have a hard time right now getting scale because property managers, how many are out there property managers? They're fiercely independent people. I mean, they're living in places where...
Look at them, you could tell.
Yeah. They have done this for a reason. It's for their family reasons. They want to live in a smaller location. They want to have more access to their community. They are members of that community. And they don't like to join other property managers. They don't want to join together. I think that has driven, since 2004, several failed attempts. I mean, the very first one I know of is ResortQuest. Mm-hmm. Which did the roll-up. And Brian and I looked at ResortQuest and we said, oh, what a cluster F. We're not going to get into that under any circumstances because it was such a mess. Owning these franchises, owning these individual locations is hard for property managers. So if franchises could get capital, then I think they could begin to grow. The problem we have right now is that the vacation rental industry has a black mark on it on capital. People don't want to invest in it.
When Vacasa bought Turnkey, Turnkey supposedly had some great vacation rental management software, and that was supposed to be that was billed as a difference maker, And now we see Vacasa, for the last couple of years they've complained about or they've cited homeowner churn as a big problem. And they're also doing something really interesting in terms of they say they're trying to empower local teams, for marketing, onboarding everybody, doing the operations, and not running it as tightly from central headquarters. So what happened there?
Well, I don't want to be too much of inside baseball, but They didn't implement the turnkey technology. And the reason they couldn't integrate the turnkey technology is that they weren't on one technology platform to switch from. They were still on 50 different property management systems. There was no way to integrate all that together. So what I think the promise of turnkey to them was not realized because they had to focus on the company that they had and not the company they desired to be. I was very disappointed because I think the turnkey technology was on the right path. It was still all my my belief was still, I don't know how we're going to grow past 25,000 properties. Even at Turnkey, I couldn't figure out how that was going to happen because you were going to have to break through a ceiling that no one had really effectively broken through.
So Booking.com is expanding in the U.S., and they say that, they're relying on property managers. I remember your colleague Brian Sharples warning them years ago that you're going to need individual hosts, and boy, that's hard to do. It's not as easy as signing a contract with a property manager. So do you think this is going to work for Booking.com? Do you think they're going to become more of a factor in the U.S.?
Well, I never bet against Glenn Fogel. He's a really smart guy. But yeah, I think it's a problem. The industry, though, is moving away. I mean, the OTAs, Vrbo, Airbnb, Booking, are moving away from individuals. They just are, because individuals are easier to aggregate because you let them sign up and they individually work and you don't have to integrate with their calendars and all that.
They're easier to aggregate individuals?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I mean, I think you can see from the history of Airbnb and HomeAway together, it was much easier to aggregate the many than the few. The few are hard. The property managers don't like to, they didn't want to pay fees. Then they didn't want to pay their percentages. And the reasons they didn't have the money to do it. I mean, property management companies are not just swimming in cash and profitability. Mm-hmm. So to ask them to then come out and pay a percentage for that was something that they just didn't want to do. I think Booking, everybody looks at the professional manager, but if you're going to be looking at the professional manager, you have to solve his or her problem. And his or her problem is they need direct bookings. And until you can provide them with direct bookings that they don't have to pay for and therefore pass through to their consumers or their owners, they're going to look for that. And I think they are looking for that. They are not hotel chains. They don't have 25% to pay for a booking. They just don't have it. And you can ask them to do it, and they will do it for marginal stuff, but they're going to go around you every time. I will always book directly from a property manager. It makes no sense to book through one of the OTAs.
So we have a few minutes left. We want to talk about some of the biggest threats to the industry, and one of the questions from the audience was about direct bookings. How do you view direct bookings as a threat to the OTAs, and given the power of OTA marketing resources?
I think there's
it's
always
kind of on the fringes, right?
They're on the fringe. I think there's always going to be a place. The OTAs are important because another thing that was the previous presentation was talking about, the customer has changed over 20 years, folks. The customer of vacation rentals in 2025 is different than the customer in 2005, significantly. The people in 2005 knew what they were getting. They were very happy getting the value for getting a whole house. They were prepared for the quirks. If they walked into a place, I remember my wife and I walked into a place in Maggie Valley, North Carolina one time, and my wife came out and said, "I just can't believe the country's shit in this house." But it was quirky, it was fun, and we expected it. People today, as we've professionalized the traveler, they have a level of expectation that can only be met with standardization. Well, standardization is the enemy of true vacation rentals. It just is. We don't want cookie cutter stuff or we wouldn't be in this business. So I think we have done a very bad job of training our customers, but Booking.com customers are worldwide. They want standardization. They better stick with property managers. And for property managers, you better fire the bad stuff. If you've got an owner that won't invest in his property, you need to fire that guy because it's going to hurt you far more than it's ever going to hurt them.
What about regulation? Is it a manageable problem? Other than New York City, of course, is it a manageable problem, the cost of doing business? And how about industry organizations or associations? What kind of role have they played?
We have had a very bad experience with industry organizations. We have an industry organization for the vacation rental industry that didn't see itself as having its primary obligation as to keeping the industry legal and to fighting the lobby for nationally and locally and empower people locally.
You're talking about VRMA.
Yeah, VRMA. VRMA has just failed miserably in its attempts to influence regulation. And one of those challenges is that without an industry association of scale and a focus that is on this industry needs to grow. Think about the most significant industries in their industry associations. Those industry associations are lobbying. That's not what the VRMA did. So that's a problem for us. I'm encouraged to see finally, after 20 years, that Airbnb has decided that yes, it's the individual host that they need to empower, because it's the individual property owner at the end of the day whose rights are being abridged by these regulations.
But you say that Airbnb favors the property managers.
But now I'm going with their PR again.
Okay.
They're saying they're going to empower the host. That's, in my view, the only way, is that you have to empower the host. And I've advocated for years, and they haven't done it. I think in the United States, we have to find the test case and we have to litigate it, that an individual owner has the right to rent short term. And until that is litigated on a national scale, we're going to be fighting these little battles right and left. It's preposterous that in the United States of America, a homeowner doesn't have the right to determine what they do with their property.
Brian Chesky did a tweet this morning. Watch the opening ceremony of the Paris Olympics from a secret garden on Musée d'Orsay. Pardon my French. What do you think of Airbnb icons? Have you followed that?
Yeah, I think they're a cute marketing gimmick. They don't work for me, because when I decide to rent something, I know exactly where I'm going and what I want. And I don't want icons. I want a great house for my family. And I'm not looking to stay in a house held up by balloons. Thank you very much.
Carl, you're sort of an icon, and we're done. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.